course, dogs are mammals, right? Yeah, dogs are mammals. They're humans. Or no, they're not human. They're part of the animal kingdom that God created. I love you, Jesus. But then I wonder, like, okay, dogs can't talk. So do they have brains? Like,
fupa. I don't have a fupa. Discriminatory routes. Excuse me. This place is a mess. How is anyone supposed to get around this place?
So, there's like this thing going around constantly and about like on Twitter or whatever that I was on Judge Judy. Like, yeah, I was on Judge Judy. And the reason I deleted it is because you guys post it trying to say that, oh my God, like she was fat or she was like, I don't get it. Like, I never denied it. Like, who cares?
God has Trump for 8 years. Done. And if he doesn't, then so be it. But I know we're not done. I know we're going to win. Nobody can convince me of anything different. And so this is...
Make a mess. Oh my God. I did that.
Hi everyone, it's me again, and Squish Gang is present, but like kind of framed weird. Better, I guess? Today we're going to be talking about the Trisha Paytas effect, which kind of just the cycle of the type of content that they're making and how it's kind of transcended within and beyond YouTube. First, I want to begin with thanking my patrons. Names on the screen, very iconic. I adore all of you. Bless thy souls. And links, Amazon wishlist, Patreon, socials, anything I'm going to use down below. And let's get right into the news. So Trisha Paytas is infamous for their trolling-based YouTube career, which began over 10 years ago at this point, I imagine. I know that they were seeking fame for a very long time. That is something that they wanted kind of their whole life. They seemed like they believed that they were made to be famous. And their YouTube career and that drive for fame even bled beyond YouTube into the reality TV scene. There are lots of videos on the history of Trisha Paytas that are better than anything I could make, that delve into a lot more topics about them and their actions online, things such as the marginalized groups that they have affected, the people that they've hurt, the way that they've tried to meld into different communities, etc. A friend of the channel, Mr. Beard, made a video on Trisha Paytas that I've even talked about on this channel. So there's lots of resources for that, because this video is actually not on the history of Trisha Paytas, but rather the effect that they've had online. So this video isn't necessarily about Trisha Paytas, but rather the blossoming of their effect and style of content and how it has kind of gone amass on YouTube. Is that a good explanation? I don't know. You'll probably get it, because there's also these chapters and everything too if you want to skip around. So the parts of the video are going to be the precedent that Trisha Paytas has set, the creators that fit the model, and why the model works. We're gonna be doing a shorter one today. Thank the souls. As you noticed, I have been doing a lot of really long content that just keeps happening by accident. Any hoozles, let's get into it. So, part one of the video. Old YouTube, and we're talking old YouTube, like 2007, kind of started as a like home video uploading, funny clips, etc. type of thing, right? Obviously, there were some channels that right from the jump used it as creative models, but that kind of took a little bit of time to gain traction, right? So then you started getting channels like Smosh, like Fred, that were these characters that were not actual representations of people, but rather kind of like a way, almost like an improv at times, kind of acting type beat, And then Fred, too, was one of the first channels that had like production and all that kind of stuff as well. So Trisha Paytas kind of got awashed into this category where it was a character, but yet still seemingly real enough that you could imagine it's not. But then you also can't tell where the lines bleed into their real life, right? Because the thing with YouTube, unlike television, is television or other traditional media is it is managed directly by the individual. It is uploaded and sourced directly from the individual. This is something that had never existed in this way before. We have to keep that in mind, right? That's the thing with the internet and these types of content is there are going to be people that gain popularity and gain traction that would have never otherwise been able to. Even thinking to myself, right? Like if I tried to I don't know what the most similar style of this is, podcasting or radio or news delivery, I guess, technically, just by my emotional set and the way that I speak. I'm not saying that I deliver actual news. I'm not attributing that credit to myself, but I think if I were to audition for that, I don't think I would get these types of roles, you know, or I would not, it would not be assumed that I could gain the traction that I have based on my just ability to do that alone in the, you know, audition setting, for example. So YouTube has allowed me to access a large audience that I would not have otherwise been able to, and that would have been outside of my reach given the circumstances of my kind of career, where I came from, and all that kind of stuff, right? So Trisha Paytas is effective this as well. Not only were they able to gain access where they wouldn't have before, because it is managed directly by themselves as an individual, there draws these questions of where is the reality? Because on YouTube, you can be completely fake, you could be completely real, or you could be somewhere in the middle, right? I exist somewhere in the middle, where while this is not a character, this is a lot more of a formal delivery than my personality. And it's kind of interesting because when I work with other creators, sometimes I'm kind of surprised by their personalities and how, even if they are composed in these types of videos, that it is similar in reality, because I am a very like loud and rambunctious person. But then these videos are a completely different delivery. And I think it's because I deliver these like essays, right? So there's my personality lies somewhere in the middle. And that's where I feel like Trisha Paytas sits too. Where on one hand, obviously things like being a literal chicken nugget are going to be outside of that scope of reality. The beliefs and issues with perhaps gender identity have some reality to them. How much and where you want them to lie, that depends, because there has been so many issues. So it draws this human curiosity, and that is something that YouTube has been able to hone in on, unlike any other form of media, because not only is it managed by the individuals, the niche interests of each person viewing is tapped into as well. They're able to seek exactly what they want. Television was not able to do this, right? Even if you had a ton of channels, you couldn't control exactly what was airing when it was airing. Unlike YouTube, where you can click on any video you want at any time and watch it wherever you want. Trisha Paytas was able to gain the interest from these more niche markets through their actions and through their trolling. And I think the interesting thing with Trisha Paytas too is there seems to also be kind of a little bit of an element of tragedy, right? As there's obviously been addiction issues. They've talked about issues with their parents. They've talked about issues with gender identity and mental health, and actually actions of assault as well that's happened. Really bad things that have happened to them. And you get this kind of, and this is going to sound like a leap, but it's still kind of true, this like Amy Winehouse idea where it's somebody that you know is suffering, but you can't help but kind of just watch and worry about them and wonder where they're going to be, right? That is another element that you can actually see reflected in normal media as well, in that interest in Trisha Paytas. Because Trisha Paytas too also has had issues with addictions and drugs that have been put on YouTube. And she's talked about like driving a car through Jason Nash's walls, certain of the most famous videos, including like the chicken nugget video, like that they were under the influence. They talked about it a lot on the Frenemies podcast as well. They've been when they've used and they've relapsed and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot of these kind of relatable factors of curiosity, and elements that can even be related to famous figures in regular media that fall to Trisha Paytas, which has now divulged into other creators trying to kind of follow that model. And that's where I'll get into part 2. So in part 2, I have 4 creators that I find are a little bit like the closest that I can think of right out of the gate. Please comment down below some that you feel like can fall into this model. We're going to start with the one I think is most similar and people would probably agree, especially when we're talking about the element of a character, which would be Nikocado Avocado, right? Nikocado Avocado, who gained a lot of their fame and notoriety through a actual interaction and beef with Trisha Paytas, which is interesting enough, right? They have that same sort of, where's the character? Where do the lines bleed? What is real and what is not?
Sorry. Oh man! Yeah.
And that same element of tragedy, while not necessarily through drug addiction and instances of abuse or anything like that, but rather their change in their health, which they've actually attempted to profit on many times with videos describing them being disabled. I wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about Nikocado for a while, but it's hard for me to approach it in a way that I can be as neutral as I want to be about the health and weight aspect and the relation to character when they're so closely intertwined. I find it's even more closely intertwined than someone like Amberlynn Reid. So I felt like I could talk about Amberlynn Reid with that neutrality, but I can't really figure out how to do it about Nick. But regardless, he has that same sort of trolling and kind of huge show that he puts on, but where it is so consistent for so much of each day. Nikocado was known to upload multiple videos a day that you cannot seem to really figure out where does reality start and where does this character end. And that creates a curiosity, along with obviously the theatrics of the videos, which Trisha has also done too, right? They are very big houses, pink Rolls Royce, Barbie pink everything, jewels, designer, all this fancy stuff, the music videos, the content of the music. Does no one remember? I love you, Jesus. I love you. Next, I want to get is to, if we're doing like the pure trolling aspect, that would be HRH Collection. It's not the vibe. Stop. HRH Collection is just, and even follows a really similar format of Trisha Paytas' videos that are really popular, which I have no other way of describing besides car screaming, where they do like mukbangs in the car and then like yell about a bunch of things that are kind of confusing, and this kind of meltdown model that Trisha likes to do, which is an element of Trisha Paytas' theatrics that HRH Collection I kind of find uncreatively ripped off. Now you've gotten this kind of, I think the thing that HRH Collection can hone on, unlike Trisha Paytas, is this very strong notion of being conventionally attractive.
Was fat. Never. Like, you guys know, I talk about it all the time. I was fat on YouTube, okay?
Trisha Paytas has struggled with weight a lot and body image issues, surgery, stuff like that. I don't think Trisha Paytas is ugly, though, by any means. But HRH Collection is very much that, like, typical attractive kind of person. So then there's almost like, because pretty privilege is very real, and I don't care what anybody says, they can kind of get away with it in a different way where they're not talked about in the same way that I find Nikocado, Avocado, and Trisha Paytas are, because I feel like a little bit of that might be fat phobia, but I digress. Next on the roster, we have Christian Walker. That kind of rhymed. That was by accident. Christian Walker is interesting because Christian Walker follows that car scream model, has those scent elements of theatrics, has that blurred line, but then delves into topics which, like Trisha Paytas, are based on marginalization. So topics like kind of politics, LGBTQIA+, and like racial aspects of things.
Now, as of today, now you may watch this in the future, Joe Biden is not officially the president-elect. The media totally took something, ran with it, and the whole game and what everyone's doing right now, and we've known they were going to do this for months, but the whole game is try to make it seem as though Joe Biden has won, push out propaganda. Oh, President-elect Joe Biden. Oh, Kamala Harris is going to be the first woman vice president. So then when we get all the proof and when the Supreme Court or whoever overturns the election, then you can go ahead and make it seem like, oh, Trump is a fascist dictator. He is, stealing an election.
Trisha Paytas has also been known to blackfish. Christian Walker is known to not want to be considered gay, even though, to my understanding, Christian Walker is a cis white man. To my understanding, Christian Walker is a cis man who likes other cis men. I don't really know. Christian Walker confuses me, so let's redact that one, obviously. But in the sense of, like, I don't really know how to get into him in that much. But regardless, Trisha Paytas, I find, is kind of the only one of these that's got it all. And all of these other people are just kind of pieces of their model. and pieces of their way of getting fame that they've kind of focused in on in almost like a niche sense, which is why I feel like they also don't have the notoriety that Trisha Paytas has, but that could also just necessarily be because of how long Trisha Paytas' career has been and how many avenues of even just mainstream media that they've been into. Because Christian Walker, almost too edgy to be able to be at the fame that Trisha Paytas is, because they border a little bit too close to hate speech, in my humble opinion. A lot of the time, they'll kind of tap a little bit too close in, right? The last one, which is the most like arguable, is I would say Amberlynn Reid. Amberlynn Reid has been known for trolling, does have that element of weight struggle, but Amberlynn Reid is more certain in there's like sexuality a little bit more, and there's less of that kind of like strong theatric element. I actually think mostly because of laziness than anything else, because Amberlynn Reid has said that they look up to Trisha Paytas multiple times and were actually friends when they cacao avocado at a time. So for that reason, I think there's going to be a bit of a difference. Amberlynn, I think if she could be Trisha Paytas, she would have, though.
This is how you swim in Kentucky.
Good, pretty.
I definitely gained weight since earlier this morning.
566.4 pounds.
I've gained 4 pounds since this morning.
I think it's an element of not having the creativity or the drive to do that, more so than a moral distinction. I have a video on Amberlynn Reid. If you do want to watch it, I'll tag it down below. But yeah, so those are the 4 creators that I have that I find are fitting that type of persona that I'm describing. This is just to kind of give you examples of what I mean. Obviously, I've put in clips too to describe exactly what I mean. Because now we're going to talk about finally part 3, why the model works. Beginning with the element of just pure human curiosity, right? As I've iterated time and time again already in this video alone, there's that element of trying to figure out where the lines end. Because YouTube is technically a social media platform rather than a pure media platform. So it's not dramatizations on television or on film. Rather, it is just a way of showing a direct person. So you don't know where they've set their lines. And it's not clear because the message delivered by the medium, technically, of social media is supposed to be authenticity, or that's what it was originally stated for. Then, of course, you have your attraction to negative attributes. This is why negativity always wins. If you look at even my videos alone, one of my best videos in a while was literally titled Airbnb TikTok is Cursed, which is like having that kind of more negative sense. Any of my more positive videos tend to not really do well. That's kind of the name of the game, unfortunately, unless you're doing things like lifestyle content. Typically, your more negative framed content is what does better. So being able to have a common enemy, for lack of a better term, or someone that can be deemed as harmful and universally disliked can kind of hone in a lot of attraction on the platform, even to just comment hate to them, to try to critique them in their comments and try to reach out to them directly, because social media is an individualized form of medium. Medium, by the way, is obviously the not plural of media, if that was a thing that anyone was wondering. Then you have the celebrity cycle of tragedy, which Trisha Paytas fits into, that type of childhood issue, the desire for fame, the falling into the wrong ends of Hollywood, the addiction, the constant struggle, the wavering of success. That is something that tons and tons of documentaries have been made of, lots of talks, even more really famous people like Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston, Kurt Cobain. There's tons of these people that have lived these kind of like tragedy driven lives that have been glamorized as their tragedy. And I think Trisha Paytas, that's also when they were talking on the Frenemies podcast about dying young and having a legacy, right? So even they've kind of picked up on that reality as well. Then, of course, you have the new environment online, the immediate access to a person, and the supposed authenticity. So if you felt like you wanted to, you could believe that it wasn't a character. If you feel like you relate to a certain attribute of them, you could feel like you relate to it by pretending that it's real, or just straight up thinking that it's real and ignoring the kind of plausibility that it's not. Finally, I do think also the alternative career options with social media make this model desirable, and some people are going to be watching someone like Trisha Paytas just to learn. Because it also seems so easy, right? To go into your car, eat a McDouble, and scream for millions of dollars, right? It seems like that's so much easier than a lot of lines of work. And sometimes there's desperation. Sometimes there's just general disregard for the kind of moral implications that these types of careers have. So people kind of just want to go for it, you know? And I think that's where you're getting people like HRH Collection and even Nikocado Avocado, right? In conclusion, this cycle does have an uncertain time length because in traditional media, this typically ends in someone's passing or a just disappearance of that individual. Social media has not existed that long or long enough to really see these long-term cycles go from start to finish. I don't know if there's going to be a new cycle like this of certain types of content creators. Maybe the kind of like Dipbrow vlogger might have a cycle like this. Who knows? I haven't really gotten to look into that as much as I want to, but propose something if you wish in the comments. We'll see. And yeah, links, Amazon, Patreon, social media is down below. Thank you to my patrons again. The vibes, yeehaw. I am 1 week through a 2-week long master's course that is 13 weeks condensed into 2 weeks. The fact that I've even had time to do this is beyond me. 1 video a week, definitely for the time being, if I can even do that, and probably a bit shorter for the time being as well. But my computer's back, everything's working, so sweet, 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 sweet. Any hoozles. You guys have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
Jinkies, let's see who the real monster is.
Why, geez, Velma, I think it might be the ruling class. It might be the bourgeoisie. I don't know.